Gotta thank my friend John for this one because I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been struggling to come up with a video idea for this week, and it took me kind of just vegging out and watching YouTube this weekend to really strike across something. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jay, welcome to Square Pegs. Recently, John did a video where he looked at every Super SNES game, and there was a lot of them, like 60-something of them, and I got to thinking, which are the best ones? Like, I know the ones I want to include on here, but there's some in here I've never played. So this past weekend, I went back and checked out every single Super SNES game. I'm giving you the best ones right now. And we're kicking things off with one that gets in on a technicality. Yeah, man, kicking things off with a technicality. That is right. We are starting with Superman, the Death and Return of Superman. Look, I just wanted to keep this on here because this is like legitimately one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo. I honestly think this is a hidden gem. I think this is a beat 'em up that not enough people talk about. And I think it's because it's a licensed game that people just kind of blow by it and don't really give it the time of day it deserves. This game is fantastic. It tells the story loosely of the death of Superman from DC Comics. You get to play as all the different Supermen in it. You start things off as Clark Kent, and you get to play as Superboy, the Eradicator, Cyborg Superman, and Steel. It's just a fantastic game. It was developed by Sunsoft, and they can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. And it is really fun. It's really well made. I am just a really big fan of the Death and Return of Superman, and you should play it. That's all. And now for the real list, and we're going to start things off with a caveman on a tropical island. And yeah, that caveman is Master Higgins, and we're talking Super Adventure Island. Now, there were 2 Super Adventure Islands released on the Super Nintendo, but I am a fan of the first one. I'm not really a big fan of the second one. It didn't quite feel right to me. Like, it didn't feel like an Adventure Island game. It felt too far diverted from what I considered a traditional Adventure Island game on the NES. And yes, you guys can tell me that it's a Wonder Boy game. I understand that. But for me, it's just a side-scrolling platformer where you collect fruit to keep your life meter up, and you go from point A to point B, and that's what you get. And that is what happens in the first Super Adventure Island on the Super Nintendo. Not only is this game just incredibly well designed and a loving throwback to the classic Adventure Island games on the NES, it has one of the best soundtracks on the Super Nintendo. Yes, one of the best. I'm saying it. I don't care what anyone agrees or disagrees with me. I'm right. It's my video. It's really fun, though. Like, it's a classic Adventure Island game. You understand exactly what you need to do from jump. There's no real hidden things here that you need to get, like, surprised by. There's no gotcha moments. It's just a classic, fun Master Higgins adventure. Don't think you can go wrong with any of the Super Star Wars games on the Super Nintendo, but for me, I always go back to the first one, and I don't really know why, because I think Empire might be better, and Jedi has the racing levels, which I think are really cool. But for some reason, I always kick things off with A New Hope, because I guess I'm just trying to find the idea of the story, to follow the original plot. And it's very loosely the original plot, because, I mean, hey, you fight the Sarlacc at the end of the first level in this one, and he doesn't show up in A New Hope. He only shows up in Jedi. But, okay, look, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I really do enjoy this one. They're a little bit strange. They're very loose interpretations of what the Star Wars story is, but I do think they're fun. I think they're well made. I think the look of the game is great. I think the variety of gameplay is wonderful. The number of characters you're able to play as is really fun, and the level design is really solid. And the music in the game, of course, is magnificent because it's all these digitized versions of the Star Wars theme from John Williams, so you know they're going to be quality. They're really fun titles, though. Like, for me, I always go back to the first one. I know John preferred Empire, and I can't really fault him for that one. I think that is the best one, like I said, but for me, always start off with Super Star Wars. It's simple. It doesn't do anything terribly fancy. It doesn't really even break the mold from what the arcade game did. It's essentially a port, but God bless do I love Super Off-Road. Legitimately one of my favorite arcade experiences, one of my favorite NES games, one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. I love the simplicity of what this game is. It is a racing game where you want to finish in first place. That's it. You're able to upgrade your truck, you're able to pick up some power-ups as you play, but it's nothing like a Mario Kart game or anything like that for power-ups where you're blowing up your opponents. You just need to go fastest. You need to get to the finish line first. It is beautifully simplistic in its design. The controls are wonderful. The look is great. I love the physics engine. Like, the way the cars feel, the way the trucks feel on the dirt is just perfection to me. Like, this is one of those games where if I had never played it, I would have looked at this and said, no, I don't ever need to play that game. It's a racing game. Who gives a damn? But legitimately one of my favorite video gaming memories, experiences, and to this day, one of the first games I will look for when I go to a barcade is Super Off-Road, and the Super Nintendo port is magnificent. I could have put Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World on here, but we're going to go with the original Super Mario All-Stars because I think this is such a clever idea for a game. This was not something that I had ever really seen before in video games. So to get a collection of games that were remastered from the NES onto the Super Nintendo to improve the visuals, improve the sound, sometimes make the controls a little bit worse because it does get a little bit skatey at times, but it's a wonderful title, and it's such a great collection. To get Mario 1, 2, and 3 and the Lost Levels on one cartridge is kind of unmatched. And just the visual improvements make these games worth playing alone. I'm not going to pull any punches and lie to you here. Super Baseball Simulator 1000 might be my favorite baseball game ever. It's one where I have poured countless hours into this game because not only is it just a solid baseball sim, if you're looking for just straight, simple, easy to understand baseball gameplay that feels like a throwback to the NES, you've got that here, but it's also smart enough to make it interesting and make it weird. Because if you want to play in the pro mode, you have superpowers. Your characters have superpowers and it's amazing. Whether it's shooting a cannonball out into the outfield, or having a super jump to collect things, or throwing a fireball, or multiple balls at once when you're the pitcher. There's so much done in this game that just makes it more interesting, more accessible, more bizarre, and people just want to play it. Like, it's one of those games, when it got added to the Super Nintendo Online service for the Switch, I remember people being like really perplexed as to why it was there, because it's a baseball game, who cares? And those are people that have clearly never spent the time to play this game. It is magnificent. It's got an incredible season mode. There's nothing about this game I dislike. One of my favorites of all time. Mario Kart might be one of the franchises I have poured the most hours to in my life that are not RPGs. And it all started here on the Super Nintendo with the original Super Mario Kart. Now, when this released, this is one I remember, I think it was my friend David that had gotten this one. And it was not something that I had on my radar at all. Like, I had no idea this was coming out, no clue what it was about. And I remember him bringing it over, or at least one of my friends bringing it over. I'm pretty sure it was David. And I remember him bringing it over to our house in Cape Coral, Florida, and we played it one summer, and it just absolutely blew my mind. Being able to play as these different Mario characters in a kick-ass racing game that was so much fun and so well designed was just mind-blowing to me. And it's still fun to this day. Like, it hasn't aged as well as other Mario Kart games, let's be fair here, but you got to dance to the one that brought you. You got to remember where your roots are from, and it all started here on the Super Nintendo. The Mode 7 graphics, the power-ups, the different worlds, the characters and their abilities and things like that, that all stems from this game right here. And it's still going strong today. Like, it's magnificent. I can't wait for the next Mario Kart iteration on the Switch too. But I love the original on the Super Nintendo as well. Super Smash TV, another game that I played with my friend David. This is one where I remember when he got this one, this is something that we sat down on his floor in his bedroom and played. And it was so cool because I'd never played this one when I was younger. I'd never seen this in arcades, but this is a twin-stick shooter where you use the face buttons, the triangle, no, not the triangle, the A, B, X, Y buttons on the face to use as your second stick. So you can aim at a diagonal in any direction, you can aim straight on. It's a really fun experience. It's very simple by today's standards. There's wave after wave of enemies. You have to destroy them. You collect power-ups, you collect items to get money. There's nothing really like terribly crazy about this one. It is a very cut and dry, very easy to understand game, but I'll be damned if it ain't fun. I love this one. I do enjoy the Turrican series. I think it's a really solid franchise, and I'll be honest with you, I had no idea this one existed before I watched John's video. I am a fan of the series, but I didn't know it was on the Super Nintendo, just something that completely passed me by when I was younger. So to get it here on the Super Nintendo and to play it now, and for it to play amazingly well and to be a perfect Turrican game on the SNES was just awesome. It's a fun title. It is a very different experience from traditional run-and-gun shooters. Like, it's not, like, for me, when I think of a run-and-gun shooter, I typically think of something like Metal Slug or Mega Man, and this one plays very differently than any of those. It's decidedly its own thing, but if you enjoy the Turrican games, or you're just interested in trying out a run-and-gun shooter you might have missed, it's worth playing. Best launch title and pack-in game of all time? Super Mario World? Yeah, I think that kind of goes without saying. This game's magic. Just pure, absolute, unadulterated magic. From the level design, to the character designs, to the music to the power-ups, there's nothing in this game that misses. Everything in Super Mario World is nearly perfect. It is beyond a shadow of a doubt, to me at least, the single greatest pack-in game ever made. It's a beautiful game to look at. It still plays well to this day, and it is still kind of the gold standard for what everyone compares great Mario games to. And rightfully so. It's that good. If you've never played it somehow, like if you have gotten to 2025 and never played Super Mario World, I can't tell you enough how much you need to, because you are going to see so many things that were influenced or created in this game that have subsequently influenced later games released down the road. It's an unbelievable title, and something where it should be enshrined in museums if it isn't already. I'm sure it is somewhere, but it's something where it is one of the most influential and best video games ever made. Good shmups are just flat out good, and you don't get much better than R-Type. And Super R-Type on the Super Nintendo is wonderful. It's an early game on the system, so it might feel a little bit dated by today's standards, but you know what? It still gives you a solid challenge, a good look, and just quality fun from top to bottom. I love the R-Type series anyway, so to be able to play this on the Super Nintendo and to have it kind of jump into that next level, into that next generation, was awesome. The game is still fun to this day. It still sounds and looks great, and the enemies on screen, the challenge inherent to the game is just magnificent. Check this one out if you haven't. It's one I think might be easy to overlook because there's so many great shmups on the SNES, but this one is high quality. There's something to be said for the Punch-Out franchise, and I wish this is one that Nintendo gave a little bit more time of day to, because unfortunately, they just don't seem to care about this IP. Like, we've had, 4 Punch-Out games throughout our lifetime? We had the arcade original, we had Mike Tyson's Punch-Out / Punch-Out on the NES, we had Super Punch-Out on the Super Nintendo, and we had Punch-Out on the Wii, and after that, it's just been forgotten. Like, I guess we had Doc Lewis's Punch-Out too on Wii U, but this is such a wonderful franchise and such a wonderful game experience that I can't imagine why Nintendo wouldn't want to make more games in this series, but they just don't. And it's a shame, because everything you see on the Super Nintendo version is something that makes the game magical. And as much as I loved the original on the NES, the original that I had played at least on the NES, the Super Nintendo plussed it in every single way. The characters were bigger, the voices were better, the gameplay was incredible. Well, there were voices in this one. And it just worked. Like, everything in it worked. I was blown away when we were allowed to include this on disc when I was working on Fight Night Round 2 on the GameCube, because it wasn't anything that I had ever expected to happen. But it's wonderful. Man, this game is so great. It's so much fun. It's truly challenging and just worth playing in every conceivable way. We had an arcade in Cape Coral, Florida that was right up at the end of my street, right near the sports card store, near Cape Coral Cards. And it was something where I remember finding out there was an arcade there and kind of being blown away that this existed at all. And I remember raiding my grandfather's change for quarters so I could play Super Street Fighter at the arcade. And when it eventually came out for the Super Nintendo, I couldn't believe how perfect it was. Like, it was mind-blowing to me that this was nearly as good as it was, and I owned every single version of Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo, but the best, of course, was Super Street Fighter 2, because this got you all the characters, it got you great gameplay, it was solid, it was fun, it was beautiful to look at, the music was fantastic, and it set the stage for literally every Street Fighter game to come after it. It all started here with Street Fighter 2. You can't go wrong with any of them. Super Street Fighter 2 is my favorite, but I love this franchise, I love this series, I love every single character in the game, and knowing that it started here and it's as good as it is still to this day on the Super Nintendo is amazing. And this has, like, legit the best opening cinematic ever for a Super Nintendo game. This is one I forgot about. Now, I'd played this before, but when I watched John's video, I have forgotten all about Super Buster Brothers, and it's such a wonderful arcade experience. Like, it is so straightforward and easy to know what you have to do. You go through and you pop balls. That's all you do. You're popping balloons. It's amazing. You have a grappling hook that you shoot up to the sky, and either the tip of the grappling hook or the chain of the grappling hook will pop anything that runs into it, and you have to pop the different balls on the screen without getting hit. It is the most easy concept to understand. It's so easy to grasp and so easy to know what you have to do, but of course the fun, like any good arcade game, comes from the gameplay and comes from the power-ups that you're able to collect. It's a wonderful title. Like, this is one that is just fun. Just simply put, it's fun. I think Super Castlevania 4 might be my favorite traditional Castlevania game. As much as I love Castlevania 2, which is, okay, that's not traditional Castlevania, but old school Castlevania, let's go with that. I do think Super Castlevania 4 is my favorite because I think it really showed what the Super Nintendo was capable of, more than really any other game that released in the launch window of the Super Nintendo outside of maybe Super Mario World or Pilot Wings. It's one of those games that just sings. Like, this was Konami at their absolute best. Classic Castlevania action, amazing enemies, huge graphics on screen, an amazing soundtrack, challenging gameplay, wonderful power-ups. Like, it was the whole package. It was something that was instantaneously fun. Like, if you had played any of the previous 3 Castlevanias, you were immediately going to be drawn to this game and addicted to it because it was that good. It still holds up to this day, too. Like, there's nothing in this one that I dislike. Like, even the stupid, like, little whip waggle that you can do by holding down the attack button and then moving your thumb around on the plus control pad. It's great. This game is one of the all-time best. This game eats my lunch, man. This game just kicks my ass up around my shoulder blades, and it is, of course, Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It's hard, man. This game is so hard, but it is so well done. And as someone who hates Ghosts and Goblins on the NES, this one is one where I was not anticipating enjoying this the first time I played it when I was younger, and what I got was a really fun game. It's very difficult. It is like insanely hard, but if you know that going into it, you're getting a game that feels like a classic cabinet arcade experience. It's a really fun title. It looks beautiful. And when you're able to beat a level or get through and defeat a boss, there's that feeling of euphoria when you finally do it that is just unmatched on the Super Nintendo. So much of games that I love started on the Super Nintendo, whether it's stuff like the Final Fantasy series really captivating me with Final Fantasy III, or Chrono Trigger, or Mario RPG games like this one here, Super Mario RPG, developed by Square, really started right here. I loved the NES, but the Super Nintendo really realized what the NES's capabilities were and made them so much better. And to get an RPG starring Mario and his friends, and being able to play as memorable characters like Geno or Mallow, it was really awesome. And to give different gameplay techniques and different mechanics that weren't anything we'd ever seen before in a Mario game was really magical. And to have those kind of improved upon as we got to things like the Paper Mario series on the N64 or the Mario and Luigi series on the GBA, that all stems from this game here, and that all started here. And it holds up today. Like, this game is still fun today, and the remake on the Switch is badass. It's absolutely fantastic, but one of my favorite games of all time, and something where I really wish that Nintendo and Sony had worked together to create the Nintendo PlayStation, because the magic that could have happened if Square hadn't gone pretty much Sony exclusive for a couple of decades would have been incredible to see. Not gonna lie, it took me a long time to come back around on Super Mario World to Yoshi's Island, because I'm not a Yoshi fan. I don't like Yoshi. If you've been on the channel for any amount of time, you know that. And it was something where I didn't want to play it. I remember when it released and I checked it out because visually the game just blew my mind when I first saw stills of it, but the gameplay I did not enjoy when I first played it. I didn't like the flutter jump. I didn't like Baby Mario whining and crying every time I dropped him, and it took me a long time to realize that the brilliance of the game is to not drop the baby. Yeah, I know, it's that simple. Don't drop the baby and you won't be annoyed, but when I kind of gave the game a second chance, and I started to play it more regularly, and I started to kind of look at the brilliance of the design, and just that unbelievable coat of paint from the visuals on this game, and to give it more time and more patience, I saw how absolutely brilliant it is. This is legitimately one of the best Mario games ever made. It really is. And I regret not giving it the time of day it deserved back when I was younger, because the game is magic. It's absolutely spectacular, and it's one of the greatest of all time. And if you haven't played it because of the crying baby, just remember, don't drop him. You'll like it a lot more. This is probably the best Super Nintendo game. Like, you can make an argument for Chrono Trigger, you can make an argument for Final Fantasy III. I'd even let you make an argument for one of the Mega Man X games, but I think the greatest of all time is Super Metroid. This is, and I say that as someone who hated the original Metroid game on the NES. I could not stand that game. I did not think it was fun. I did not like it at all. So it took a lot for me to even try out Super Metroid, and I remember the summer I finally played it. It was legitimately the only video game I played for about 4 months. I had to 100% it. I had to beat it. I had to experience this story and know this character and know this world that Samus inhabited, because the game is just perfection. It has mechanics that make the game accessible and easy, but it has a ramping challenge as you play through the game that keeps adding brick by brick of difficulty to make the game more challenging and more engrossing and more engaging. It is legitimately just a masterclass in game design. There you have it, the best Super SNES games on the platform. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree, disagree, what you think about this list. This was just something fun. I really do have to thank John for this video idea, because without his video, me watching it on Friday night, wouldn't have come up with this one. It wouldn't have been something I thought of. But let me know in the comments down below what your favorite Super SNES games, which ones did I overlook? Which ones do you think I should take another shot at? And if you're going to say Super Alfred Chicken, no. Until next time, folks, I've been Jay. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. This is your first time here. You enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. And remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.